Welcome to the RomaPress podcast with John Solano and Andy Mattioli.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the RomaPress podcast. We hope you are doing very, very well today. As always, thank you to all of our patrons over at Patreon. If you would like to join, get early access to episodes, join the group chat on WhatsApp, and other things as well, you can go to patreon.com/RomaPress. And as we mentioned in the previous weeks, we will be doing a video edition of the podcast coming within the next week or two. And you will be able to find that on YouTube. So if you could go and subscribe to our channel at YouTube, youtube.com/ISRomaPress, the same name as all of our other social media channels. All right. Andy, Roma have made it through the international break, and I am knocking, of course, on wood as I say this, relatively unscathed. It appears, it looks like, at the moment at least, Gianluca Mancini is going to be the only one that is in doubt after he sustained an injury with the Italian national team. So we will see what happens once he's able to get rest, get back into training, so on and so forth. Right now, Roma, they didn't give us a timeline at all. So it's really just a wait and see sort of situation. But usually is now during the first and second international break when we see the injuries begin to stack up for Roma. So to really only have one guy of consequence and for it to be not so serious, obviously that's a good thing. Some of the other things we had happen during this international period, we have, of course, this is starting to turn into the Nacho to Roma equivalent of like a management rumor, because I think for every single season since Totti quit playing, and then subsequently since he left his role acrimoniously at the club as an executive, ever since that has happened, every single season there has been Francesco Totti coming back to Roma, so on and so forth. It happens every single season. It has happened. Forget every single season. It seems to happen every single month. Okay, this is one of those things where I feel as if I read it every single week, and it's one of those episodes that somebody is trying to will into existence, and I don't want to read about it anymore until it actually happens. But my complaints aside, there are rumors that Totti and then another former Roma player, Alder, coming back to the club. I listen, man, I am on record as to how I felt about how Totti left. I think you and I both, and we did catch some criticism for this when we were a bit disappointed in the way he handled his goodbye. And I don't think we are the only ones. I think our good friend Sandro Austini probably wasn't too thrilled in the manner in which Totti decided to leave. If we want to, you remember what he told to him, yeah, during that press conference?
Oh yeah, of course. When you looked him right in the eye, said Austini,
Eccolo.
Austini,
Austini, eh?
Austini.
Oh, okay. So I won't say do you care, because of course everybody would love to see this story go start a new chapter, I guess, so to speak, is probably the best way to put it, because it seems that many want this to happen for a variety of reasons. But for me personally, I mean, to see it end so ugly the last time, it seems like it's just natural that Totti is going to come back and take on some sort of larger role. you mentioned this. I won't forget because it's always stuck in my head about when Totti was at Roma. How many hundred episodes ago we don't know. I don't know, but I specifically remember you saying something about the difficulty with Francesco Totti having an important executive senior management role, whatever you want to label it as. One of the biggest issues that seems to be present when he's there and is often clashing with his colleagues. It seems to be that very large ego. I can't think of a better word than ego because ego just innately has a negative connotation to it. But he needs a large role and he needs a lot of influence, and we saw what happened last time when he was not given said influence, right?
Yeah, I mean it's it's a wonderful thing to see these names linked with Roma. Even Aldair. These are all important names in the history of the club, and they make sense. In a club like Roma, a club that really its entire, I mean, not entire, but a large portion of its image is due to its history, to some of the legendary players that it had, players that could have achieved much more elsewhere, but their whole determination to stay really chiseled their place in the history of the club and in the history of football. And so for me, it almost seems like if there is one aspect missing from this current Roma, which is structurally, it's a team I like very much. Everybody has a role, everybody has a well defined role. There is no necessary, there is no needless talking. There is no talking heads clashing behind the scenes. I mentioned this during our live stream on the channel on YouTube. That I remember with Pallotta, it was that whole regime uh, had the problem of too many people talking. You had Baldissoni, you had Gandini, you had Monchi, you had then you had Fienga. It was just this endless stream of names, and you didn't really know who to pay attention to. And I think in a club like Roma, you need at least like one figure that links to the history of the club, and so we don't have that right now. We have, a really well run club given the circumstances. Tiago Pinto as the general manager, Ryan Friedkin vice president, Lina Soloco as the CEO, etc., etc. But that one figure that is the link between the fan base, the history, and the club that is operating right now is missing. So it's only logical to see these names be linked with a return, given the fact that Mourinho has been very vocal. He needs somebody to protect him. He needs, when he came here, Mourinho came and embraced the role of the spokesperson for the club. He was happy to be the main guy, the protagonist. But it got pretty tiring after some time, and I think he felt the repercussions on his own on his own career. Given the fact that, for example, he's gonna miss, four games in the Europa League this year. That's for a manager like Mourinho to not be on the touchline for 4 European matches. I mean, that's taking away his livelihood, his passion. That's you are hurting him personally, and obviously it's something he brought on himself. But I think once that feeling of having the entire world against him sort of set in, he realized he needs someone there to take the heat off of him. And Tiago Pinto is not willing to do it. He's already said it a number of times. And when he's actually spoken, against referees, and he's always been very, very diplomatic to a T. And I don't know if that is exactly what Mourinho wants. Mourinho wants somebody that can get along with everybody else. That's why we see Francesco Totti, right? Francesco Totti has a reputation in Italy among the fans, among the media, with other clubs as well. He's on good terms with former players, former managers. He's a man of the people. What you can't question in Francesco Totti in my opinion, it's his experience, it's his curriculum. Totti is not somebody, as I said before, he's not somebody that picked up the books and went to study and did his courses at Coverciano, say like De Rossi did when he wanted to become a coach, right?
I thought you were going to go like the university route and
No, 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 no. Coverciano, no, no, no university, right? No, no,
no,
no,
no, no, no,
no,
no. I
no,
know.
no.
I thought you were saying like in
Just
terms
no,
of studying.
just no, no. I'm not. I don't. I'm not
We
that.
know he's not diplomat. I mean,
I'm not that ambitious with Totti. No, but even the basics at Coverciano, Totti started and never finished. He quit. He quit. He left the course. So, and he set up his own agency. And I think with Totti, it's always the same
and
thing.
by the way, agency of which he really is just the face of. He's not
he's the face of,
licensed.
yeah.
Right.
He's the face of. He's kind of the
The front
mentor.
man, I
Yeah,
believe they
the
call
front,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
But that's and that in a way that would be exactly what Roma would need him to be here. That is why I say, although that it makes perfect sense to have him back at a club, I don't necessarily know that Totti would throw himself at this opportunity, because last time out when he worked for Roma, after retiring from football, and decided to join Roma as an executive, he was very unhappy because he was being used as this kind of front man, the guy who shows up in the stands, who I believe he attended a couple of I think he attended the first Champions League draw or something at Nyon, that kind of thing. He goes out there and gives a couple of interviews here and there. I don't think Totti wants that. He was very unhappy about it. He felt like they just given him this job to keep him busy, to keep him there, and to make money off of him. I don't know if that's if he's in a place right now where he necessarily wants or needs this. That is why I said it also in the live stream. To me, it makes sense to have Totti back, but it also makes more sense to have somebody else, not as big of a name, obviously, because Totti is so great. It's such an institution, especially in this city, in this country, that that to have him can be both beneficial and it can be detrimental as well, because the expectation is so great, especially to have him in a managerial position as an executive. You expect to see him, I don't know, follow in Paolo Maldini's footsteps at Milan, where he became technical director, was responsible for running their transfer market, or Javier Zanetti at Inter, who became the vice president and is basically the guy who calls up, say, the players in South America and says, "Hey, listen, you want to play for my club?" Like he did with Lautaro. Javier Zanetti personally flew to South America, went to games that Lautaro played in, and sort of became a father figure to him and managed to lure him into playing for Inter. And I don't know if that's what Totti would have to do in an ideal setting. But I'm not sure if this is what Roma are looking for. Roma are looking for a mediator, somebody who has who's PR savvy, who knows how to talk to the media, who knows how to handle high pressure situations, who knows how to speak, in various settings, who knows languages, because you'd have to handle yourself both in Italy and in Europe. Like, say, for example, you suffer a defeat like the one we did in Budapest. The tensions are high, everybody's unhappy, and you need somebody out there who goes and expresses what the team is feeling, what went wrong, some of the decisions you were unhappy with. Nobody at Roma was able to do it because the only person that that tried to do anything about it was Mourinho, and he was suspended for 4 European match days. So that is why I mentioned names like Aldair, like Zbigniew Boniek, guys with a reputation, but not that great of a reputation. Guys with connections, guys with experience. Zbigniew Boniek worked for UEFA. Aldair has worked in Brazil. lives in Rome. They all have homes in Rome. They speak several languages.
I was
That's
about
what.
to say Totti barely even speaks Italian, man.
Yes, well, let's not go there because we don't want to make fun
We have
of
to do the list. Cassano,
good old
Insigne,
Checco.
Verratti.
We want that with this. It's even, for example, like I mentioned in our patron group chat. I mentioned the name of Rudi Voller. We know he's now taking care as interim coach of the German national team. But I'm just saying that kind of profile. Somebody who clearly has an experience, clearly has a connection to the city, to the team, and is part of a history. I mean, you're not gonna get Max Tonetto and expect everybody to pay attention and pay their respects. I mean, it's Max Tonetto. You're not gonna get Cassetti or even Simone Perrotta because, hey, at the end of the day, I mean, these are okay. Good players, nice, but it's
The most mild-mannered personalities
yes,
on
exactly.
earth.
You need if you need somebody that can tie the whole thing together, like the rug in the Big Lebowski. It ties the whole room together. You need somebody like that because with Mourinho, it's dynamite, it's explosions, it's anything happens with Mourinho. Either he storms off and you can't hear a word from him, and he doesn't attend press conferences, he refuses to speak to the media, blah, blah, blah. Or on the opposite, he goes and starts to rant and accuses people of doing this and that, and then he gets suspended. And at the same time, then you have Roma, the Friedkins, who are famous for their silence. I mean, their whole tenure is built on the importance of silence, right? Of acting before saying anything. That's remember when they wrote that letter where they introduced themselves to the fans and said, "You're not gonna hear from us very often. What you're gonna hear from us is when we do something, we achieve something," and that's what they've done, right? They go out of their way to pick up Mourinho. They deliver him to the fans. They do the same thing with Dybala, with Lukaku. Great. But you also need at some point you feel that missing link of somebody that can take the pressure, that can handle these situations, and do so in a diplomatic fashion. So that's why I think Francesco Totti's return is the most romantic thing that can happen at Roma. On equal terms with Daniele De Rossi potentially someday when I'll be 92 coming back and coaching the club, right? Because everybody seems to envision this, and in the meantime the guy can't even get a job after that disgraceful time at Spal.
Oof.
But that's the way it is. It's romantic, yes, but is it realistic? Is it what Roma needs and also what Totti needs? I really doubt it. I think both parties prefer to look the other way right now. I completely agree and understand if Mourinho himself personally envisions Totti as the perfect man for the position, but I also think that only stems from the fact that there is a tight connection between the two, but it's not necessarily productive, neither for Totti's career nor for Roma and where they are right now. So we have to take into account the fact that we're looking also at Mourinho potentially leaving next year. So you have to
Right.
look beyond. You have to, whatever steps are taken in these next few months, they also have to be taken with the awareness that, hey, you might be looking at replacing Mourinho in the long run. So whatever you do has to fit into that particular scenario.
Absolutely agree. And you can understand, too, from the mindset of Jose Mourinho, why you would want, particularly Francesco Totti, because, I mean, the weight his words can carry. If he were to come out and say, send a message to Lega Serie A, hey, we are getting screwed and we are tired of it. Those words coming from him, obviously, particularly in the city, they're going to mean a lot more than they do, as you said, than Tiago PInto And that is where I guess I want to go to next, because he was asked about the situation during the press conference of last week about his future, about the future of Jose Mourinho. Unless your opinion on it has changed, you have been very firm in the belief that you think Jose Mourinho is going to leave after this season. I am still holding out hope he will remain. I will say this until I am, blue in the face. But I think Roma should do whatever they can to keep hold of him. I think the strides that have been made, and I know when you look at the table, it's easy to say, which strides do you speak of? I don't see anything. I just think what this guy does bring and has brought to Roma, I just think it is so difficult. There are just some things that you cannot replace, that are not easy to find on the open market. And if I were the Friedkins, I would do whatever in my power to keep Jose Mourinho at the club. So I'm still not ready to, raise the white flag and say, yes, he is absolutely going to leave after the season. But the one aspect of this that really does not get discussed as much is the situation of Tiago PInto. And I have to admit, Andy, it is difficult to judge him, to give a very strong balance or verdict as to how he has done since he's come to Roma, because he came during this very weird period at the club where just months prior, you had the Friedkins officially take over. You have him coming during a stretch where, simply due to UEFA limitations, he has to really play the role of not only technical director, but also magician and accountant, in order to reinvigorate the squad. So, given that he's had several, it is almost as if his time at Roma, there is a giant asterisk. It will say that Roma achieved a record of whatever it has been under Tiago PInto, but I think there should be a giant asterisk with all of the things that I just outlined. So, all things considered, if you were to take away all of those limitations and all of those things that he has had to work under, I really have very few complaints about Tiago PInto. In fact, if we want to just look and compare his record to the records of all of the recent, at least, sporting directors of Roma, I would venture to guess, if you went like 1 for 1, and again, this is one of those things where you can't just compare, him to Monchi, to Sabatini, without taking also into account the context of the situation. You can't just, it is not a direct comparison. You have to take the full context of the situation at the time. I know that is difficult to do when you just take the transfer records and you look at who has come in, who has come out there, and each of the guys. But I mean, I have zero complaints or even criticisms of Tiago PInto, because, okay, yeah, Shomurodov got that wrong. Every single director on planet Earth gets deals wrong.
That's what I always laugh about, is when people focus on those names, when even those excellent sporting directors, general managers that we all know and love, people now have built this sort of fetishized, mythologized image of Walter Sabatini. Walter Sabatini in his time was faced with so much pressure and criticism that people like to dismiss. I mean, this man built
so much pressure. He is forgetting to hang up the phone while on the phone from Marco Violi.
Exactly. And
Google that one.
and so much pressure and criticism until like his last press conference when he's literally caught, on camera smoking like 20 cigarettes within an hour. um it's so we all, with Tiago Pinto and also Jose Mourinho, these are two names that will have a specific place in history of the club because of that moment. Recently, with Roma's form, Roma started the season poorly. Okay, I give you that. There came now this graphic of that people really, sort of focused on and paid attention to, and now like to refer to it as basically common knowledge, which is Mourinho has one of the lowest points averages in Serie A as a Roma manager, right? And so he has it lower than Garcia, Spalletti, Ranieri, Di Francesco. His average is the lowest. To me, it's unbelievable because we have to consider the circumstances that these managers, sporting directors, whatever you like, operate in. It's essential. Not only, I mean, it's essential to the sport, to the team. Roma have, if you look at what Roma have been through, we're in 2023. Think about where Roma were in 2013, right? It starts the era of Rudi Garcia starts. We have Walter Sabatini bringing in some exciting talent. We haven't got a taste of Champions League yet. It's all new, and Roma have been through so much over these last few years. Their financial situation changed. We've faced so many restrictions. We have wonderful players come in and then leave. We've won a trophy, so you always have to take this into account. The fact that now the future of Mourinho and Tiago Pinto is being looked at, but also not being prioritized, it's because I feel like Roma and with the Friedkins especially they're very result oriented, but also growth oriented. They have to see that. This is what I always say here. Mine is not a prediction of top four. Mine is we have to get top four because it is the essential step to that growth that
Yes.
started, right? With Mourinho coming here, he says, I want to see people celebrate at the end of my tenure. And we saw people celebrate in the streets after the Conference League. The next step was to get as far as possible in the Europa League, potentially win that trophy. We almost got there. And the history books will not show that Roma almost got there. They will show that Sevilla was the winner. But in essence, that step, that growth was there. Now the next step is making a top four. So when we read, because now these reports come up and say, the Friedkins are not prioritized, there are no discussions in place for Pinto's renewal, for Mourinho's renewal, and Pinto himself said whatever happens inside these discussions will never be made public. We will never divulge what goes on behind the scenes when we discuss the possibility of renewing or not renewing the contracts. So the fact is that Roma want to see where can we go this year. The essential thing in everything, in say Paulo Dybala staying, and potentially Romelu Lukaku, say if it works out, if for him to have a future at the club, everything depends on Champions League football. So the Friedkins want to see that growth. I think the Mourinho as well, because why would he want to stay, beyond this season if he sees that, okay, I've gotten everything I could from this squad, right? Even this past season, I almost had the thought of, well, this man, will come to the conclusion after that Europa League final that, hey, I look at the sweat, blood, and tears of these guys, literally the blood and tears, because if you think about Roger Ibanez's smashed nose and the tears of Paulo Dybala, that's what it was. That's what it took. Maybe that's over. Game over. We move on to something else. I think people in the end are always very impatient. People don't like. It's like people who watch movies nowadays, right? The attention span is very short. There is no the fact that we want to jump right into the action, the fact that we're 3 games into the new season and people are already listing their preferences for the next coach, is borderline insane. To the fact that we're not even willing to see where this team can go. I'm surprised, because I thought the general consensus is, okay, people got really excited by the Europa League final. People got excited, people got agitated with how it went, with how it ended, and they wanted to see if this team can do something more this season. And what, you're going to give up 3 games in? That's what you're going to do? You're going to just walk away and say, "Hey, can we get Roberto De Zerbi instead?" Are you crazy? Like, that's what you aspire to? That's what you want for this team? No, this team has to figure it out. We saw this team figure it out in the past. Doesn't mean that it will happen this season. If it's over, it's over. If the roads, if the road that Mourinho is on, that Roma is on, if that road will eventually part, so be it. It's how it happens. I think we all loved Garcia in his first year. The end to Garcia was a natural or almost forced end, really, because of how long it took. But it's something that, and then, a new Roma was built. Then Spalletti came on. Spalletti leaves, a new Roma is built. Eusebio Di Francesco gets us into the Champions League semifinal. He leaves, and the life goes on, the sports goes on, the team goes on. With Roma and the Friedkins especially, there is no... I don't get the feel, with Pallotta in those final years, where it was Petracchi, where it was Fonseca, and then there was Fienga. That whole situation was so bizarre because you felt like the team was free falling into a complete lack of plans. Like, does this team have a future? You didn't know the answer to that question at that time. With the Friedkins, to me, I get the sense that no matter what happens, no matter who leaves, who comes in, there is a future. There is a future because what they want is the team to remain competitive. The moment this team is not competitive, the moment the team does not compete for Europa League, or the moment that this team completely and utterly surrenders on all fronts in all competitions, that's when you fold it up. That's when you have to start from scratch. So as long as Roma have that edge, to me, the discussion regarding Mourinho, Tiago Pinto, their future, will they renew or not, is irrelevant.
And to add to that, this is probably the first time, at least since even beginning RomaPress, where I have seen a group of senior management executives that are all in unison, all on the same page. When it was the days that you just said, Fienga, Baldissoni, everything was so fragmented. And in fact, you even had some of these guys sniping at each other, criticizing each one another behind each other's backs. I mean, if you were within the good graces of Baldissoni, we know who some of those were, you would get told one thing, but if you, for instance, had a line to Sabatini, you were told, and you were, I guess, a different sort of narrative was painted for you, and you cannot, for all of the criticisms that anyone can levy against, whether it be Tiago Pinto, the Friedkins, they don't talk enough. Tiago Pinto, he's too quiet. He got some moves wrong. Whatever your criticisms are, I can say without hesitation that is one thing that I think is overlooked and not appreciated. They are all rowing in the same direction. They are all on page as to what the future of Roma needs to be, where they need to get to, what their objectives are, what they are aiming for. You cannot have said that in the past. I mean, I still have nightmares of the days of Italo Zanzi, man. I mean, the poor man's Alec Baldwin. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Billy Baldwin. Baldwin. Let's.
Oh.
No, well, not even Alec Baldwin.
I suppose that is the poor man's Alec Baldwin.
No,
I
but
mean,
it's true.
oh,
You had that people now don't realize when people say, "Oh, this is the worst Roma team I've ever seen." The actual terror that you felt of potentially seeing this team disappear into oblivion, literally. I mean, Roma, they were owned by a bank at some point in time. Um, that was scarier than any result. So for me, there is no end to Roma if, say, Mourinho walks or Tiago Pinto walks, or if they decide to extend. Nothing ends. It's like it's become with the Friedkins. It's so evident that they are guided by the need to entertain people. They are very, people like to say, well, they're very American. Yes, they are very American in the sense that they want to entertain. They want to, like, even that Lukaku presentation. I mean, it just screams, you know, entertainment, just like Maximus walking into the Colosseum saying, aren't you, is that why you're here? Aren't you,
right. Are you not
and,
entertained?
and,
Yeah.
and that's, so in order to entertain people, you have to be competitive. You have to keep that edge. So I know that whatever happens, if that edge is gone, if this team becomes dull and lifeless and refuses to compete for either of these competitions, then that's when the Friedkins know we have to step in, we have to move on, and that's the decision that will eventually be taken in the future, because now people are talking. I don't even understand why we need to discuss this now, because literally we're 3 games into the new season. um that's going to be the principal criteria: is, are we competitive? If no is the answer, then we got to change everything. And I even the fact by how they handled the CEO change between Pietro Berardi and Lina Soloco. I mean, it happened like from day to day, just like that. Oh, he's gone. Oh, she's in. Like Paulo Fonseca. Paulo Fonseca was still the manager of Roma, and they announced Jose Mourinho. That's so.
Ice cold.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it is efficient, it's pragmatic, and it shows me that they strive for something. Those
Yes.
choices may not be, you know may not be up everyone's alley. People will not be happy. Maybe, people have this idea now, oh, we're gonna get De Zerbi. Maybe we don't, and maybe we focus on someone who's completely different, or maybe you renew Mourinho. But every decision so far, within the limitations that Roma operate in, has been taken in order to make the team competitive. Whether you like it or not, the addition of Gini Wijnaldum, say, is to make it competitive. The fact that he breaks his leg in training doesn't depend on who's signing him, right? So that's all I can really say is, in my mind, this Roma team will be fine as long as they remain competitive.
Absolutely. Okay, we will be back on Thursday as Roma, they get back into action at the weekend against Empoli. And now is when things really start to kick the season off, and when the schedule begins to get a lot more packed, and when all of the European games begin to kick off as well. So this is go time now. This is when we will get a much better idea as to what this Roma of this season is going to be. So we will chat with you in a few days. Until then, ciao.
Ciao.